Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well. And hey, you had a great week up until this point. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our Friday show, and our Friday show, of course, consists of Ralph Bond. He is our science and technology trends correspondent, and he'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk about a ton of fun and great stories. Ladies and gentlemen, you're definitely going to want to hear about these because, this week has been full of, bickering and news and headlines about, the war, and of course the earthquake has, been so awful to hear about what's happening in Turkey. There's a lot of bad news, but there's also a lot of good news. And, sometimes it's hard to focus on the good, but that's what we're here to do for you today. So, of course, computeramerica.com is where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, video archives, and, of course, the directory to the podcast if you like to listen to us that way. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have, of course, the show notes are going to have links to everything that we talk about here today. It's going to be very important. Ralph puts a lot of work into making sure everything is properly sourced. If you want to, dig in a little bit deeper to some of these stories, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be your number one place. We'll also have a link to Ralph's website. So if you'd like to get more of Ralph and his segments here on Computer America, as well as his segments over on the Mark Mason show over at KEX Portland, his website's going to have links to everything. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started. So, as I said before, computeramerica.com, but Ralph Bond has been for a little while now our science and technology trends correspondent, and before that, he's been a longtime contributor to Computer America in many different forms. And Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
I'm great. It's great to be back. And like you said, if you're looking for news to make you feel bad or sad, you're really in the wrong place, because what Ben and I do every Friday is use science and technology advancements that are going to leave you feeling like, oh, there is hope for humans. So with that said, it's great to be back. We have a really fun mix of news to share, starting with a literally shocking breakthrough is our first story.
Yeah, it was, when I read the headline, I'm like, oh, wow, that's, there was innovation a couple hundred years ago with Ben Franklin, and now there's innovation here today.
That's
so I'm glad that they're still working with lightning. So with that being said, Ralph, why don't we go ahead and give the nice folks who may be new here a little intro into what we try to do on our segment.
Sure. And welcome if you're brand new. It's great to have you. What I do is I'm kind of an aggregator of science and tech news features I find by monitoring a host of online news outlets. And I look for important stories that don't usually capture mainstream press attention. And sometimes they're weird and quirky and funny and so forth. And we have a really good time. I'm always on the lookout for news that gives a glimpse into where we're headed in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it. It's all open and fair game for Ben and I to take a look at. Mm-hmm. And what I do with each news item is present the essential points in the show notes. So come and get the show notes from computeramerica.com. And we try to condense things into a really digestible form, easy to understand. And I stress to the audience, as Ben did too, get the show notes. You can get the links. You can see the pictures. If you want to dive deeper into the science, you can, because again, we're just going to give you the highly condensed high points of each story. There's so much more behind each one of these stories, and I encourage you to check out the show notes, and that is particularly applicable to story number one.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, cool. The headline here, as you were alluding to a moment ago, recent experiment, I should say experiments plural, shows lasers can direct lightning strike. When I said lasers, I was thinking of that goofy movie, lasers. What was
Austin Powers and
thank
all
you, Austin Powers. What's it the deal? He was going to destroy the Earth with lasers.
Is Dr. Evil and he's giant laser beams and a laser with sharks. Yep.
And mini me. Okay, I digress. The source for this story is a couple of them. First, the UK's Guardian newspaper, and then that led me to the Polytechnical School in Paris. Their article about this work. There you can find out a lot more technical details. So if you want to do that, you can. But let's get started here. Lightning bolts are huge electrical discharges that typically spark over 2 to 3 miles. And the charge carried in a bolt is so intense, it reaches 30,000 Celsius, and that's approximately 54,032 degrees Fahrenheit. What? And this part really just bowled me over. I didn't really know this. That represents about 5 times hotter, than the surface of the sun?
Mm-hmm.
Inconceivable. No wonder getting struck by lightning is a serious issue.
They don't recommend it.
Not recommended. So more than 1 billion lightning bolts strike the earth each year. Good Lord, causing thousands of deaths, 10 times as many injuries, and damage that runs into tens of billions of dollars. And Ben alluded to good old Ben Franklin's lightning rod, which are great safety tools. Thank goodness we've had them. But what if you could direct the path of lightning? So that's where we're going with this. Scientists at the Polytechnical School in Paris this month announced the results of their successful tests between July and September of last year to redirect lightning bolts using a terawatt laser for the first time. And that's by the way, a terawatt laser system used for high intensity experiments and particle acceleration. So this is some serious technology. Yeah. By the way, also, if you dive into the article posted by the school, it's the Institute itself, you'll learn about the lightning rod tower they built and so forth. There's a lot more technical details you can dive into. But back to the story here. On the top of the Santis mountain in Switzerland, they positioned a powerful laser near a 124 meters high, that's about 400 feet high, telecommunications tower that is struck by lightning about 100 times a year. And the scientists waited for storms to gather and then fired rapid laser pulses at thunderclouds for a total of more than 6 hours. Now, instruments set up to record lightning strikes showed that the laser pulses diverted the course of 4 upward lightning discharges, and we'll explain that in a moment, during the experiment, which helped protect the telecom's tower. Okay, time out. What are upward lightning discharges? When I read that, I went, okay, what's that? Well, upward lightning is the development of a self-propagating lightning leader from a tall object that travels upward toward an overlaying electrified storm cloud. Upward lightning can initiate without any preceding lightning activity, herein classified as self-initiated upward lighting. And I've given you the source for that in the show notes as well. So it's pretty geeky lightning technical stuff here. But here's the deal. We need to get into a reality check here to make sure everyone understands what this can and cannot do. So the laser used to divert the lightning bolt was powerful enough to potentially damage the eyes of overflying pilots. And during the experiments, air traffic was closed over the mountain test site. But here's where this is still a good thing. The scientists believe the technology could still be useful to help protect, for example, rocket launch pads. Think about what NASA's had to experience with lightning issues in the past. So to protect rocket launch pads and strategic buildings where no-fly restrictions apply. Interesting. So there's, some usefulness for this. This is in its very nascent, early stage proof of concept and so forth, folks. But I think it's another interesting tool to add to the good old lightning rod, which, as you correctly point out, has been with us since Ben Franklin. So there you go.
Yeah. And of course, there's, tons and tons of videos on YouTube and stuff like that of authorities actually catching people who stand out in their backyard, take their laser pens, their high powered lasers that they buy off, Amazon or whatever. And they, kind of aim it at the most stupid people aim it at like the helicopters that can just stand there and just look for you and send the authorities right to your house. But it's been common practice not to shoot laser pens even from the ground from your hand at pilots, flying low flying airplanes and stuff like that. I can only imagine how powerful this laser is and how much damage it could do to a pilot.
Extremely powerful.
But yeah, but still, I had no idea that, Ralph, like when you think about lasers, you think about, just a beam of light that really has no other properties other than just a very, very bright beam. The fact that it can draw lightning, I mean, that was just news to me completely. And
isn't that something? Yeah.
Very, very, very fun idea. I like it a lot. And they say, obviously, the cost is going to be higher versus, just a typical lightning rod. But like you said,
of course,
it will still have its purposes, and it's still very, very cool. Just to imagine just shooting lasers into lightning storms and being like, we'll take care of this. And then, next thing you know,
gosh, yeah. I think of NASA. Really we talk about rocket launch pads. I mean, and the private industry launch pads and so forth and so on. If you can get a no-fly restriction over the area in question, that was the one that really resonated with me. And of course, certain strategic buildings to protect them from lightning strikes would also make a lot of sense. Military facilities, maybe telecommunications facilities in areas of, say, Florida or Texas or other places where lightning is a really real deal problem. So interesting thing to think about.
And then, of course, before the show, we talked a little bit about adaptive headlights and your experience with, in cars with adaptive headlights that are able to detect objects in their path and change the nature of the beam, in this case, the headlight accordingly. Maybe a technology like that can scan the air and, be like, oh, there's a plane, there's a helicopter, there's, birds.
And stop,
let's not fire the laser beam at that exact point. So, there could be solutions to come up with its shortcomings, but still it's very, very cool. And of course, hey, a story from Paris, which, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, we cover CES every year. France is actually a hotbed for new ideas and for high technology.
Yes,
they have a very, very active tech scene over there in Paris, and definitely keep an eye on them because they, like, as far as like the European Union goes and like that whole area, Germany's always going to be up there with high technology, but Paris is up and coming for sure.
Yeah.
So there you go. Story number one. Story number two. And this one's going to be a little bit different. This one definitely goes into the science category, but still, the military strikes again. But this one's a little bit different.
Yeah, I got this story from Popular Mechanics, and of course, I couldn't resist this headline. The Pentagon wants a drug that will heat your body, heat, H-E-A-T, not eat, heat, heat your body ASAP. Okay. So here's the deal. A Rice University bioengineer, Jerzy, I hope I'm saying his first name right, J-E-R-Z-Y, Zablowski, recently won a grant from the Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, better known as good old DARPA, to work on a proposed, now folks, we're talking about a proposal here, okay? We're not talking about something that you can go to the grocery store and get now. But work on a proposed new drug to help humans temporarily withstand extreme cold. Now, the goal of the proposed drug is to reduce cold adaptation for soldiers from weeks to hours by enhancing the body's chemical reaction to cold temperatures. And immediately I thought, oh, if we had this and we could get it to the soldiers in the Ukraine, the good guys, wouldn't this be a nice thing? It'd be so terrific to help those and help. Well, if you talk about the Turkey earthquake, helping those people that are now in the dead of winter and they're standing out in the street or trying to survive in cars. If you had this kind of drug to help them adapt to cold, would be wonderful. But back to our story. So first, a little high school science background for us here. Our bodies respond to cold in one of two ways. The fastest includes shivering, which raises your body temperature. I now appreciate shivering like I never have before. Never really thought about it, right? But it's actually to try to warm you up because you're moving. Okay. And this one, the next one, I knew nothing about. So this was really fun to find out. The other is generating heat through a chemical reaction when the body's brown, like the color brown fat cells break down blood sugar and fat molecules to generate heat. Okay, wait a minute. Brown fat cells? Time out. What are brown fat cells? Well, brown fat is a type of body fat that regulates your body temperature in cold conditions. brown fat activates right before you start to shiver. Isn't that interesting? Brown fat also burns calories and stores energy, and you have a small percentage of brown fat in your body compared to white fat. Brown and white fat. Oh, lovely. And there's a source here, the Cleveland Clinic, for that little definition. You can check that out. But the problem with brown fat cells breaking down blood sugar and fat molecules to generate heat, it's a very slow process that generally doesn't generate enough heat to withstand extreme cold temperatures due to the slowness of its result, let's say. Okay, so that's the challenge. The Rice University bioengineer plans to develop a drug that makes brown fat cells more active or accelerates them. So instead of having to spend weeks adapting to cold, which is interesting too when you think about it, that the human body can do that. It takes time. Yeah. But instead of weeks to adapt to cold, a soldier could perform better within hours. And a little joke here for us, most of the time this past week when we take our dog out for a walk, it's at or slightly below freezing here in the Portland, Oregon area. And so, boy, would I love to take one of these tablets or whatever the form of the drug administration is. In fact, the article, I don't think said, is it an injection? Is it a pill? What is it? But anyway, I would love to have this to stay warm.
Yeah, and they said, you're right, a new drug, so we don't know if that's a pill or an injectable or anything like that. But don't be surprised, Ralph, to hear a lot of stories about the Department of Defense and DARPA fund and stuff like that working with body fat, because a couple of years ago, I think the Pentagon said that the average BMI the average BMI of their recruits that they're trying to bring into the military, because you need a constant flow of servicemen and women to replace people leaving the service and whatnot. They said that's their biggest threat to national security right now, is that their soldiers are not combat ready. They're just not at the BMI that they need to be, and they're having a real problem finding recruits that are in good enough shape. So they actually said that obesity is a national security threat. So they're working on ways to, either through a drug or a pill or something. Of course, diet and exercise, they do that in the military anyway. Sure. But to be able to take a pill and, kind of cure obesity, a cure for obesity is on the military's checklist. Interesting. To do, Ralph. So don't be surprised to hear a lot of stuff about this, in the coming years.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a really interesting, that would be a fun thing to kind of find out what DARPA's up to in terms of body alterations. And who knows, it could involve CRISPR and genetics and all that kind of good stuff. Who knows?
I'm sure nothing is off the table, but you're right. And I guess the surprising thing to me about this article, again, was the fact that the body does eventually naturally adapt to their climates. This just, reduces the time span that it takes.
Exactly.
And I had no idea that the human body was that adaptable, that it could be like, we're going to be cold often. Let's start burning this brown fat sooner rather than later. Very cool. So
now, there were several eye openers for me too. Yeah, I agree.
and thank you so much for the background, because I completely forgot about brown and white fat cells. As lovely as the pictures that paints as I drink my coffee with creamer, let's go ahead and move on to story number 3.
Yes. This one is really great. It's talking about a very important development into technology that's been with us for a few years, but let's get to the headline. Recent breakthrough dramatically cuts the time and cost of making green hydrogen from seawater. So creating hydrogen from seawater is not new, but this breakthrough is a significant step. I got this from a wonderful online outlet called interestingengineering.com. Terrific. Check it out, everybody. But before I dive into this, I need to explain a little bit about green hydrogen. And some of our listeners may know all about this, but in case you don't, let's give you a little background. So I need to explain a little bit about green hydrogen and electrolysis, which plays a big role in this story. So for the past few years, researchers have been working on systems to create or extract green hydrogen from seawater using electrolysis. So that's been with us for several years. That's not new, but you'll find out what is new in a moment here. Green hydrogen refers to hydrogen created without the use of a fossil fuel such as natural gas. So you can make green hydrogen out of, you can make hydrogen out of natural gas. Green hydrogen is another story. And hydrogen, of course, Ben, you know this all too well, is a big deal because engines that use it as a fuel have an exhaust of only water vapor and warm air. So that's why hydrogen is such a turn on for a lot of people. Although the distribution of hydrogen and how you get it to the source and how you deal with it, the infrastructure of it and so forth, it remains a big, big challenge. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But still, the promise of hydrogen as a fuel is very exciting. Okay. Electrolysis, and warning, this is geeky, involves passing an electric current through a liquid containing ions to induce a chemical breakdown of elements. In this case, of course, we're talking about oxygen and hydrogen in seawater. Now, I know this is a long, long build-up to the big drum roll news, but stay with me. So methods to date to extract green hydrogen from ocean water require using energy-intensive and time-consuming saltwater treatment steps before an electrolysis system can break seawater down into oxygen and green hydrogen. And those preparation processes include reverse osmosis desalination, there's a classic, purification, or alkalization. All right. So a lot of steps, takes time, takes money, and so forth and so on. Okay. Now, drum roll. With all of this in mind, finally, Ralph gets to the big news. Recently, an international team of scientists, you know, I love collaborations, headed by the University of Adelaide in Australia. And by the way, talk about the folks in France doing some great science. The Australians are doing some great stuff. Anyway, So an international team of scientists headed by the University of Adelaide in Australia announced they have figured out a way to eliminate all the preparation steps and directly split seawater into oxygen and green hydrogen using a commercially available electrolysis machine with nearly 100% efficiency. Let that paragraph sink in, friends. We're at a major turning point. If this all pans out, if it works, if it's practical and so forth, which the article certainly leads you to believe it is, this is a fundamental. This is, as Andy Grove used to say, strategic inflection point. And Andy was one of the founders of Intel.
To imagine, seawater everywhere being our new source of fuel. We have lots of seawater.
Wow, I know. Isn't that wonderful? I just, this is where we were talking about. We give you folks, Ben and I, every Friday, a reason to keep going on, hope for the future. And this story fills that bill. So let's go back to it here. And to further reduce cost, the electrolysis machine they're using can work with a cheap and readily available low-cost catalyst made of cobalt oxide coated with chromium oxide on its surface. So it not only is it great that they cut out all the prep steps, they also can use a very low-cost, readily available catalyst. This means, wow, just wait and see. Now, if we can get the hydrogen distribution infrastructure part of the equation solved, folks, right? If someday I can pull into my gasoline station and have the option to get hydrogen in a practical way. And we talked months ago about Toyota trying to create these hydrogen cartridges that would go into your car and all this sort of thing. Yeah, fine. If we can figure that out, we're home free, folks. Water vapor and heat is the only exhaust. Gotta love it. So, and by the way, time out. What's a catalyst? What is the role of a catalyst? We talked about low-cost catalysts here. A catalyst is a substance, that speeds up a chemical reaction or lowers the temperature or pressure needed to start one without itself being consumed during the reaction. There's a little source there to explain this too. An electrolysis process needs catalysts to work, and the best current industrial electrodes use the precious metals iridium, I can't even say this, and platinum. So there's a key point, right? Didn't we just say these guys in Australia and their friends have also figured out how to make a low-cost catalyst work in electrolysis for this purpose? That's the point versus precious metals. So one of the hindrances to this was all the steps before you could do this to get green hydrogen out of seawater before, and having to use precious metals as a catalyst. Throw that out the window. Now you go directly to splitting and you use a low-cost catalyst. There's a lot of science behind how they averted or got around those steps, so you need to dive in and do more research. But I just wanted to share this major, big-time breakthrough. I just love it.
I'm sure changing your crucial ingredient from platinum to cobalt oxide, which, to be fair, I don't know the current market rate of cobalt oxide, but it's probably less than platinum, which is, one of the more expensive materials out there.
Yes.
So, lots of breakthrough and very, very good news coming out from Australia. And I think Australia, really has the most to gain from something like this because they're so isolated, being on their own continent and not having accessibility to a lot. Well, other than drilling in places like the Great Barrier Reef and stuff like that.
Right.
They can drill up gas and stuff like that, but to be able to import, let's say, hydrogen, maybe not as feasible. But they can turn it from seawater. They have a lot of that. Still, this is not just for Australia, but for everyone, Ralph. That is a really, really cool story. And to be able to just, put these plants in a number of places with even less setup, less steps, less, cost.
Absolutely.
Fingers crossed. I remember the last time I talked about hydrogen fuel, and my Debbie Downer comment was back then and still is now, is that hydrogen is the smallest atom you can get. It's very, very hard to make a closed system that can have zero hydrogen leaks because the atoms of hydrogen just like to spill out of any tiny, tiny, tiny little imperfection. So transporting it, Ralph, like you said, really the big thing to tackle. But hey, being able to generate it, that's another big one. So very, very cool story.
Yeah. And that's where I go back again, as we just mentioned, and you recall the story about Toyota looking at these cylindrical cartridges of hydrogen. That it's a really clever idea. You would go to your fuel station or whatever, and it's almost like those propane deals where you bring your empty propane thing and you pull out of the cage the filled one and you go on your merry way. That kind of a concept where your cartridge would fit into your car. When it's done, you go and maybe you have some backup cartridges at home or whatever the case may be, but they're very self-contained, very safe. To your point about the hydrogen, the distribution and infrastructure, all that still needs to be worked out, but it can be, I think it will be. And if we have the will and the way, we can do it. Get rid of fossil fuels.
As far as all the alternative fuels, and we've covered everything from algae to different battery technology with different kind of composition, stuff like that. I think hydrogen does promise a lot of scalability and solves a lot of issues. So that's definitely good news to hear. And of course, great work from, again, it seems like a lot of our stories are, of course, research, which makes a lot of sense. But they do eventually end up in technology that we use today. So very, very nice. Story number 3. Very cool. Number 4. And hey, this one, very important. I don't know what's up with all the cancer. And this is more of a personal anecdote. I got to say, COVID really delayed people's kind of routine checkups and routine checks over the past year or so. Man, there's been so much in my personal life. So to hear something that cancer treatment, even cancer treatment, which we've thrown a lot of money, a lot of time, decades and decades worth of research at, we're still making breakthroughs. Perfect.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and do story number 4.
Yeah, and a little setup to story number 4 here is when it comes to cancer treatment, what I see in the research that I'm aware of is we're going to attack this nasty stuff 360 degrees. So many different ways. I truly believe with the combination of genetics and other treatments and so forth, we're gonna decode this stupid thing and we're gonna nail cancer. But that's optimistic, maybe. But here's the headline. This is a fun little, how could you resist this headline? Improved cancer treatment inspired by the foam on your latte. What? I had to find out. And this, again, is a great way to end our segment. And I got this from medicalexpress.com, a fun website, by the way. And medgadget.com is another good one for medical advances. Okay, inspired by the foam on top of lattes, as well as gummy bears and Pop Rocks candies. Keep that in mind. Researchers at the University of Iowa, with the help of an international team of colleagues, and we'll talk about that later, I believe, in the show notes, are creating new what are called biocompatible gas entrapping materials. The acronym is GEMS, which can be formulated as foams, solids, or hydrogels. And the solids would be like your pop rocks, okay? These new gas entrapping materials, are designed to carry high concentrations of a variety of therapeutic gases directly into tissues, and for our story, including cancer tumors. And the new experimental foam from the University of Iowa team that they have created is highly enriched with oxygen. Okay, why oxygen? Well, oxygen has been shown to boost the effectiveness of standard chemotherapy and radiation treatments in mouse models of prostate cancer and a type of sarcoma. So the poor mice have to go through this, but it's very encouraging. So oxygen plays this role. The researchers are now conducting experiments injecting oxygen-enriched foam directly into cancer tumors to see how this can help boost chemotherapy and radiation. And Ben, as you know, I'm a monster fan of international scientific collaborations. I just think the scientists get it. They don't mess with all these little squabbles about religion or the politics. No, science is science is science. Okay, but that little soapbox pushed aside for a moment. The other collaborators in this ingenious effort include good old MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, of course, Beth Israel Deaconess, I hope I'm saying that right, Medical Center, and Harvard Medical School, combined with the folks in the University of Iowa. How wonderful is this? And hopefully, of course, this will become another weapon in the fight against cancer. Great story, so inspiring. And I just love these international efforts.
Yeah. Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center is in Boston, Massachusetts. So there you go. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
Yeah, and of course, I'm so bad at medicine, Ralph. Like, I've always thought that when they do injections and stuff like that, and I know this isn't going into the veins of the person, this is going into the tumor, but I thought, you don't want air in the injection because, it could cause a bubble that goes to your heart or your brain or something and causes a big problem and, kills you instantly. The fact that they're doing, injectable foam with, a lot of air in it, I guess it's safe. I don't know much about, the whole medicine of using oxygen and, this kind of thing. Very, very cool though. And you can see the diagram that we had up on the video portion. Yes. You can see it right there. And, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So
yes, they are.
And Ralph, that was, hey, very, very cool. And I definitely like here at the top where, the whipping siphon that they have. Yes, it's just like a barista would use to make the foam on your latte. Very, very cool.
Well, hey, and Ben, by the way, thanks for picking up. I didn't catch. I just assumed, stupid me, that Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center was in Israel.
Me too.
Thank you. This is an all-American deal here, folks, and that's just wonderful too. But I do love international collaborations.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I never heard about it, but Ralph, that's one thing that I really enjoy. Is, of course, a lot of these stories I had not heard about. We cover the news daily here on the program, but we definitely don't get to cover stories like these. And I hear from new institutions, new people, new collaborations, and new ideas. All of them are great. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to check out more, hey, computeramerica.com is going to be the best place, but also Ralph's site and the podcast, wherever that may be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into the program. We will catch you here next week, every Friday with Ralph. Everyone have a great day. Have fun. Bye-bye.